you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
You know, just before we ended the night, because I've been thinking about it all week, you guys made the news in the most fabulous way last week. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it was a tractor trailer, a semi-truck that turned over and spilled sex toys all across the highway. This is true. And I started thinking about, like, why a whole truck in Oklahoma, why is there a whole truck of vibrators? Why are they strewn all over the highway? But why so many? And then I started thinking, and I'd support the theory that because you've taken away a woman's right to choose, maybe they don't want to take chances. Maybe they're going to put things into their own hands, and who could blame them? And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen! Mama Queen! Matt fucking Cameron in the truck. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. You know, a couple of weeks ago I went on social media and I did this little thing like, all right, I want to figure out what states, what countries, what Canadian provinces that we haven't covered on this podcast yet. And overall, there's not a lot. I think there might be in total 10 combined. In states, it was 4. And after today, 3, because Oklahoma, for the first time in 326 some odd shows, we are finally doing a show from the state. I don't know why we've skipped on Oklahoma. It's not on purpose or anything like that, but we have a good opportunity to do it today because we actually have to sort of make up a request, because when we did Montreal 2005 a couple weeks ago, that was the request of our patron Jeff Tracy. And I wasn't able to get his thoughts on that show. So what happened was I completely botched even mentioning him in the episode and thanking him. So I told him, I'm like, all right, you're going to get another one. We're going to do it as soon as possible. And here we are. This is Jeff Tracy's request episode. So I made sure we got to mention that, made sure we get it in right away. And he gave me a little bit of notes, and we'll talk about that before we get into the set. But yeah, this is 2022. It's still pretty fresh in our mind, so it's kind of good to go back to those sometimes. And a lot of people said that this show felt like a sleeper show to them. You know, sometimes the band will say, it's not the last show on the tour that you want to be at, it's the penultimate show. So this is the penultimate show of the 2022 tour, and we're getting to it. Oklahoma for the first time. We can talk a little bit about the Sonics if we have to, but we're going to start by talking about something else that's connected to 22. We'll get into that in just a second. Randy Sobel over here, Javier Hervas, the guru, the guy, the Strat-O-Matic. Salt in the Strat, actually. Oh, he's over there.
The Stratomatic. That's another one. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. This is getting very close now. I think we can kind of start to get a little bit reinvigorated that this band is about to go back on tour in less than 2 months. So I'm starting to kind of put that in my mind. It feels like so long ago that tickets went on sale and the announcement was made. That was 2024. That feels like a century ago when looking at this winter.
Yeah, that there was quite a gap. Yeah, and I still need to figure that out with vacation time, but I'm pretty hopeful that I'm gonna at least make it to a couple of shows in this run. So we'll see. We'll see which ones. I don't know yet, but I'm gonna try my best.
I feel like you're going to end up in Nashville. That's what
That's
my
the
head
rumor.
is telling me. Yeah. Maybe it's because Aaron keeps pushing you to go, and maybe it's because it's the closest to you. But for some reason, I see it happening in Nashville. So,
No,
but
that'll
I
be
mean,
fun. That'll be fun.
if you can go to Florida, if you find the tickets for Florida, then you should go to Florida. Obviously, you were just in Florida.
I mean, there's options. I think it's gonna be more about taking the time off and everything. And yeah, Nashville will be fun. Maybe I can go to the Gear Garage and grab that $1 million guitar just to play it for 10 seconds before it gets away from my hands.
Well, you did tell me before that you started that your boss offered you 3 vacation days. Eh?
Yeah, that's a good trade in. So we'll see what we can come up with.
And I want the listeners of Live on Four Legs podcast out there to keep that in mind, that if you do have a ticket available, that we can point over in the direction of our guru who is in desperate need. So please, please, people, if you have a ticket to Nashville or Raleigh, well, let's get you there. We'll work on it. So here we go. 2022. Some of the talking points for this year, and we did a 2022 episode like a month or two ago with Ottawa. The topic of conversation for this year is, for the most part, how COVID bit into this band. And that comes from leg one. We didn't get through the May run. We barely got through those Oakland shows. Ed was sick as a dog at that Fresno show, even with Cruisin' coming to help. But it was really tough, and it was kind of a microcosm of what was going on in our world. COVID, while we were still sort of getting back to normal, and it does feel so long ago that we can say that, we were still getting back to normal, but these things, traveling and being around people, it's just going to happen. I mean, so many people that I knew that came back and tested positive. You kind of make the sacrifices here that, yeah, you want to do something for your own good that's going to be good for your mental health, that's going to be good for your leisure by going to a concert, and you take time off from work, time off from your regular life just to go back home, find out you're sick, and have to take more time off. It's a tough thing to have to go through. And you know what? We can't even say that we're not dealing with it anymore, because it's not like COVID's not around. We just kind of figured out how to deal with it better.
Right. And I remember those years. It was clearly a challenge just to try to go to a show. Or you remember there's some shows, they still have the recommendation, like wear your mask. But it was unfortunate just the fact that so many fans were moving around. And like you said, people take time off. They plan this stuff with their families, like they see it as a family trip sometimes. And then you have that unfortunate thing that you just go to a show, have a great time, and then you're feeling kind of weird the next morning. And then boom, you're sick, and then you have to take 3, 4 more days or 5 days, which was the policy around that time of work. But like you said, the risk right now is still out there. Hopefully, we are managing the situation better, but it's always going to be a risk that it's going to be present whenever you go to where you have like a large congregation of people around you. It's part of our normality right now. We just have to deal with it.
Yep. And look, I am a victim. I'm a 2-time victim, if you want to say. And the first time is what I want to talk about here. So a lot of you might have seen on social media that I published out a trailer for a new documentary that I had been working on. And I'd been working on it since 2022. what happens is you take so much footage and you realize, okay, this isn't going to edit itself overnight. And I got so many other things that are on my plate to deal with, edit wise and pod wise and life wise, that you just kind of get into it in little spurts here and there. So it literally took me 3 years to finish this documentary. I finally got it done a couple weeks ago, a month ago. Just a lot of stuff to get through. You got to tell the story and everything like that. So a little bit of background for those of you who are excited, because I am very thankful and grateful that it got such a positive response, because not everything that you put out to the internet is going to garner a positive reaction. Somebody out there is going to find something negative to say. And thankfully, in this, nobody did. Everybody said, wow, that's really cool. Like, I'm really looking forward to this. I want to see it. And I appreciate that you guys are so invested and you want to see this, because, yeah, I mean, worked a lot on it and try to get it as perfect as I could. So I want to kind of explain everything before you guys get to see it. And it's going to be out on Friday on our YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube, just search for Live on Four Legs on YouTube and we're the one that comes up. The premise going into this was that I was going to the Sacramento and Vegas shows. And I remember that I originally, after COVID and everything like that, I think because the last show in 2018, that was the week that the pod started, the Fenway shows. And then you have all this time in between. You think that you're going to get out there and meet people in 2020, but you don't. So 2022 was really the first time to go out and sort of experience this as, the podcaster, storyteller that I turned into over time. So I really wanted to go out and grab a GoPro and document my time with everybody and just sort of kind of give a glimpse into the day in the life of a Pearl Jam fan during showtime. And that's what the goal was. And that's still ultimately what happened here. However, like most good documentaries, you have a focus at first on something, and then somewhere in the middle, something happens and it catches you off guard and your story completely changes. And that's really obviously what happens here when we get to Sacramento. Everybody had dispersed. I was coming from San Francisco and got a ride from my friend Brian. And literally as we got in the car, we found out that it was canceled, and show up to Sacramento. And basically there were people there, not a lot though. A lot of people had dispersed, but the thing is that we kind of document here how you make the best of it and how people can bring the best out of each other in tough situations. And it's overall, I think, partially like my journey, my experience, but it's a lot of this is how we got together as a community and dealt with everything that went on that weekend. Because a lot of people that didn't go to Sacramento, that were supposed to just go to Vegas, they obviously canceled their flight and they didn't go out there. But there were some people that did. There were some people that were on the road already and said, you know what? I'm not wasting this. I still want to go to Vegas because of the sake of going to Vegas. And I was one of those people. I could have decided to go home, but after talking to some people and figuring out like, okay, what the plan was going to be in Vegas, because what happened was I was supposed to stay in a hotel room with Patrick, and he got us a room at Tropicana, and he decided not to go out because he didn't go to Sacramento. He was supposed to fly out like the next day after the Sacramento show. So that got thwarted. And I'm like, shit, well, I have a plane ticket to Vegas, but I don't have a hotel room and all. So yeah, I mean, these things sort of come up, and I'll tell the story in the documentary and kind of show just what it was like to get everybody together. And that's basically what you're in for if you go and watch this on Friday. So, any thoughts there? Like, be the people there. If you have a question for me in the peanut gallery, then this is the time I can answer some things.
I'm just excited because how can you make a good time out of just a negative situation, especially knowing that there were some people like just traveling exclusively for that show? I'm just excited to see it because I think it takes a lot just to make something, I don't know, worth to remember and based on a negative situation like that. So I'm super excited to see it. I guess I'm going to have more questions after I see it, but yeah, I'm looking forward for that. I'm very intrigued.
Well, I think a little bit of that, we used the line so much just that weekend that we were turning lemons into lemonade. And if it weren't for how strong the bond in this community is, then I don't know if I would have put everything together and been able to do it because obviously, Ned. Ned's
Hmm.
a great guy, great friend, and we actually met Ned that weekend. We met him in Sacramento, and the way that it happened was we were like sitting in some bar, and we stopped him. He was wearing a Pearl Jam shirt. We're like, hey, come over here, come sit with us, because I said the whole time, I'm just like, let's just invite Pearl Jam fans to just hang out with us so we can all share this experience together. Now Ned comes to all of our events and stuff like that. It's like that's just sort of how you meet people, and I feel comfortable when I'm out on tour being able to just go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, let's spend some time together and just kind of bond over this band," because it's not really a stranger situation, if that makes sense. You
Yeah.
already feel connected.
Right. I mean, like usually when you're walking around like cities or venues and you see somebody with like a t-shirt or a hat or something it makes you connect with that. It's just you're sharing something in common for sure. And maybe you're not going to be strangers, but I've had the opportunity to hang out with Ned a few times too, or a couple times, I think, Chicago specifically, and it's such a cool guy. So it's funny that you met him in that way, and now he always attends and he's very present throughout the community. And when we
Right.
meet online, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool how that relationship evolved and started to develop based on that situation. That's quite cool. That's what this is all about.
If this was like, hey, a baseball game got canceled because it rained out, I would not be sitting there and making friends with other baseball fans.
Right.
I it's a different thing. You might connect with baseball, but I feel like it's a little bit different with Pearl Jam fans. I feel like you connect on all different levels. And that's another conversation for another time. But essentially, that is the promotion for God's Dice, a Pearl Jam tour story coming out this Friday on the Live on Four Legs YouTube page. I'd really appreciate it if people went and checked it out because obviously, putting the work into it is really important to me, but also sound out. Let me know what you think. And if I should still be doing this on tour again, I'm going to prepare to do whatever I can in Florida and a little bit in Raleigh, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So, Oklahoma City, and I spent a lot of time talking about like that first leg there, but also Europe. They had to cancel a couple of shows because of the wildfires and it getting to Ed's throat and everything like that. And I think a lot of what this show in Oklahoma City is that it's the celebration of getting through everything, getting through a whole entire leg unscathed, and honestly, like putting together some excellent shows. Toronto, Camden, St. Louis, and I feel like this is the band kind of letting loose here and being like, this was a success. Even though we had some down points of this year, this was a major success for us, and we're just still happy to be touring and be in front of a good crowd. And this is a very good crowd in Oklahoma City, too. I think the two parties feed off of each other enough where it creates something kind of fun and memorable. People will call this a sleeper show, and I think they're right on the money. People still kind of mention this here and there, but is it the best of 2022? It might be like in the top 10. It could be. It really could be. I don't know. I'm not going to make that decision now, but it's just a fun show.
You can tell that the band it was having a really good time, and like throughout the entire set celebration, maybe they were like, we just got it through, because I think 2022, it is a very challenging year for the band. There was a lot of health situations in the first leg, COVID and everything that is surrounded to that. And I just respect a lot that the band decided to go like, all right, we're going to go for a marathon, and maybe we're going to make a conscious decision about down tuning a few songs so we can stretch out our sets in the way that we are used to play them, and instead of making it shorter and more limited to what they can do. So I think as a fan, I struggled a little bit with this, but later on, you just, I think you have more appreciation for everything that it was going on, and the fact that they decided, like, okay, we're going to push forward. And this is one of those shows that, like you said, I think it's a sleeper because the set is fun. They were having a really good time, and the performances are solid. There's a few ones that you can really like analyze, and you can kind of spend a little bit more time into him.
So, because I accidentally stiffed him on the Montreal episode, I am going to share a little bit of what Jeff had to message for me about this show. So, he says, the merch line was the hottest that I've ever been in. Was he in Nashville? Because Nashville was pretty damn bad. Nashville was easily the worst heat index day of a Pearl Jam show that I've ever been to in my life. And I don't
Really?
understand. Yeah. And I don't understand how people in a line that was almost full circle around the whole entire arena, and also they didn't get started until like an hour after they were supposed to open. It was tough. It was a tough one. People were needing water, and you can tell, like, I took video and went through the whole entire line. That's on our YouTube page if you want to check that out. But I went through the whole entire line to just talk to people and see what was going on, and it was rough. But all I can say is that I think it kind of extended to the rest of the week as well, because I seem to remember Louisville being pretty hot. St. Louis, I feel like there was some wind that day, but do you remember it being hot?
Yeah, St. Louis, it was hot. It was not that hot because I remember that I was having conversations with people that they were coming from those cities, and they were like, yeah, it is hot, but it's not as bad. But the day of the show in the morning, I think we had a little bit of wind. And then when we got into the event, it was quite okay. But I remember that during the weekend, we had a little bit of humidity. We went to a baseball game and all that kind of stuff. So maybe not in the level that you guys experienced before, because it was hot, but it was not that drenching level that you guys were experimenting.
Okay, so look, that Midwest late September heat, like I get it. I've now
Hmm.
lived through that a couple of times. So
Okay, yeah.
so to reiterate that, he says the merch line was the hottest I've ever been in, and people were passing out. Yeah, I thought people were going to pass out in Nashville. So please, people, hydrate when you're outside at shows. Come on, don't be stupid. Stop drinking beer if you're going to be outside waiting. Drink water. That's all you need to do. Drink when you get inside the show. Anyway, love the slow garden opener to start. To me, All Right might have been the highlight of the show. It was so powerful. Hard to Imagine was so good. It was my first kick down the chairs moment. Alone in Difference were more highlights for me as well. Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And we'll talk about all of it right now and start with something that you just mentioned. So we talked about, and I feel like I talk ad nauseum about Garden in 2022, how this was the return to form and maybe the best year since like 1992 that this song has had. And opening up in this show, this was the first time that they had opened with it. And last year they opened up with it a couple times as well in some important shows. The Garden and Wrigley, a couple others here and there. So Garden opens this show, first time ever, and I feel like it was a tribute to how good they were feeling about the song at the time, where they're like, you know what? We've been playing it within the first couple songs. They played it at the number 2, I believe. That was definitely the Ottawa version was number 2. The Garden version, in the Garden, I should say. Garden in the Garden was at the number 2 spot, and it feels like they were feeling so good with the song that they were able to just be like, you know what, we're comfortable enough to try it. And it worked. It worked out really well.
Nauseously quick, I don't question or existence, but I got questions of our modern need.
This is a song that, especially around this time, I think it's going to be a good fit no matter where you put it around those first 4 to 5. But it is brave that the band decided that, okay, I mean, we're feeling good with this song. We're just like feel confident playing it, and just boom, you go in and you get a very strong performance. And the song has a lot of power to it. That's the thing. Like, I think it did recover that message that maybe we had in previous years with previous versions that maybe we didn't have around other tours, but this one has all the elements that I think you want to find in that good garden, especially if it's a set opener.
You know what's interesting is that, like, while I like it as the opener, you have the 4-song sit down section. And you said it, the song has a ton of power in its builds. It feels like it captures all of that weight, and not to throw a pun in there for Oklahoma City, but it's thunderous. It does get thunderous. And to me, I'm thinking that this past year when I got to see it again in the Garden, when you go from Garden to Corduroy, like, your trajectory is upwards, so you're building off of that. And in this, you're going from a powerful Garden to a great rendition of All Right. I really like this version of All Right, but it feels like you're not necessarily building upwards in the set. You're sticking kind of to the same level, if not just dipping just a little bit, if you know what I mean. Like, that is interesting for this kind of placement here. I think it works more when you jump right into the set afterwards.
Yeah, and when you look at these 4 to start with, it feels a little bit like an EKG, kind of like up and down, up and down. Like, it doesn't have that very defined momentum moving up. But, all right, it's a really good version. I think Sleight of Hand is very interesting because of a few things that we're going to analyze as well. Hard to imagine, though, it's the perfect kick down the chairs if you want to get emotion, if you want to get, okay, we're going to get going. Because Ed also a few times, he said, we're just here warming up, these things are going to get moving. And I think it's a good combo to start with. But yeah, you miss that curve going up, especially if you decided to place it to start with. It's hard to top. It's kind of like you cannot go any higher than that.
But again, like I mentioned, All Right is good performance. And to date, because they did not play it in the last 2 years, this is the last version of All Right. Now, I'll pose this to you. Will we ever see All Right again in a set? It wasn't like one of the songs that took off from Gigaton, and clearly they don't seem very interested in playing Gigaton songs moving forward. You think they go back to it on like a one-off in the next couple of years?
Okay, I know that this is going to be recorded, and I'm going to say it right now. I don't think All Right will ever show up again in a set, but pretty sure that like the first song on the new leg is going to be All Right.
Well, I hope so.
That's what they do. But yeah, I don't see the band being very interested in this song anymore. It's unfortunate, but I don't think we're going to see it in a long time. Maybe one off here and there, but I don't think it's going to be on a consistent basis.
Do you think that if they had the full 2020, that this song would have had more of an impact and appearance in sets? or right around the same? Because there was only 6 performances of this.
I believe that if the band would have had the natural timeline that they decided that we're going to go with, maybe the sentiment around all the songs with Gigaton will be a little different. Because I think that the band, when you see the timeline that in the way that they wanted to do things around that tour, it definitely distorted the feeling of the songs for them. That's what I believe. I think if that 2020 would have happened like in a regular basis and all the dates were in the way that they were designed to go, maybe those songs will have a positive memory attached to them and not like the songs that they were kind of like, well, this is the album that we're not able to play for 2 years because we were in lockdown.
So you think that COVID definitely put a damper on the excitement for this record? Because that's what it seems like. That's kind of what it seemed like from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think it completely distorted like the feel for the record just from a band perspective, because some of the songs on this album are pretty good and live are even better. And I think it's just a perception thing coming from the band that they're like, well, this is a time that maybe we don't want to remember a ton. Therefore, these songs are going to be related to those memories. Therefore, we're not going to use them a lot in our live sets.
Yeah, I think the benefit of, the other albums, but I'm going to just say Dark Matter here because it's fresh in our heads, is that the crowd got to learn and love the songs while they kept playing them every single night. And it happened at a time where their first show was like a week or two after the album came out. So people are still intaking this at its earliest form. And 2 years in, where Gigaton has been out for 2 years, you don't get that initial reaction anymore where it feels fresh. It's not fresh. What's honestly fresh to people in 2022 is going back to all of the great songs that they've wanted to hear for so long because they hadn't toured in 4 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the impact is going to change. People I think were craving to see the band live more and listen to those songs that they were craving to listen to in a live setting. But I think the album sat for too long and lost that new aspect. So therefore, it's kind of like, oh, you're going in a quote-unquote a new tour to show your quote-unquote new songs, but actually they're a little bit more than 2 years old. It's kind of defeats the purpose.
So, like you mentioned, he says we're going to do a couple more mellow ones, but first I want to say good evening, Oklahoma. Been waiting 2.5 years to say those words. We'll ease into it tonight because it's going to get moving. This is a request. Then he mentions COVID and says their city looks good after COVID. And this is what happens when you feel like you lost some time, then one day you wake up and everything has changed, but you don't remember the day that it did. So the next section before kicking down the chairs, or as we're kicking down the chairs, sleight of hand, hard to imagine. And I love both of these versions. I thought were terrific. Ed emphasizing the roadie fucking knew by heart line. I liked how he did that. Like, every time that he can kind of emphasize it, and yeah, swearing is swearing, and like you always kind of get a little jolt when he swears when he doesn't have to or not supposed to, you know what I mean? But sonically, for sleight of hand, it feels like there's a ton of force behind it. This feels like it should be the quintessential sit-down song, and I've only seen it one time, and at that time that I saw it, I thought that it worked in that scenario, the way that they played it. But this, I think, had a little bit more of an edge that felt like you could be on your feet for this.
Yeah, it has a lot of ambience to it. Stone tried something different. He was playing with, if we remember, he has a pedal called the Strymon Big Sky, which you can basically pull up a bunch of different kinds of reverbs. So it's going to make kind of like the room bigger when you're playing an instrument. He plays a shimmer plate reverb type echo that is very subtle, but it's still going to have like a little bit like a trail in the back end. I love the fact that he was doing this. It creates a lot more space for the song. It creates so much more ambience to the song. But also Mike was playing with a lot of stuff too, and all the rest of the band members were just like trying to connect with whatever the spaces were being generated, which it feels pretty cool because it gives you so much, and then when you get to the power chords, it makes a better emphasis, and it kind of like gives you something that is going to be more prevalent for the song. So I just really like this version. This is one of my highlights for sure.
Yeah, and then Hard to Imagine right afterwards. I think when you go to a place like Oklahoma on a Tuesday, and within the first 4 songs, you're getting rarities like Garden, as much as they played it in 2022, is considered still to be one of the lesser played songs off of 10. And then you get one of the least songs played off of Gigaton, and then Sleight of Hand and Hard to Imagine, which you almost never see in sets anymore. So really for the first 4, this crowd is just gem after gem, like, hey, check it off my list kind of songs. It's Hard to Imagine. I mean, it's one of my favorite songs of theirs. And whenever you get to hear it in this capacity, and this is going to be the one that takes you in and gets you into Hail Hail and Giving a Fly kind of songs, the way that it soars in this is just majestic. You give Ed the guitar on at the end, and I love when that happens. Like, it feels like a true impassioned and triumphant version. And the jam takes you on a journey. And when Mike is on top of the stage, he really just soaks it all in, and it's tremendous. Again, one of my favorite songs, so I'm never going to say a bad thing about it, but I am transfixed. And thankfully in 2022, I got to see the song. It had been since my second show. I got to see it in Canada. I was very, very thankful. Same spot as well. One of the highlights of that night for me.
Yeah, I mean, great version. Perfect song for kicking down the chairs too, and it's a song that even though that you don't have a lot of different parts, it's just the fact that it gets so big and so powerful and so emotional with a little change of the pace is just, yeah. It's one of my favorites too, and I've never seen it live yet. So I know, it's on the list.
Let's check that one off. 2025 is the year. Let's get Hobby to a show first, but
yeah, that's the first thing, yeah.
And then let's get Crown of Thorns and Chloe first, and then we can start talking about Hobby to Imagine.
Yes, that's number 1. Everything else comes after that.
We'll work on it. Send letters, everybody. All right, now it's time to rock. Hail, Hail, Giving a Fly. Not a lot of songs say, let's jump in feet first, then Hail, Hail. It seems like, again, the spirit of this show is apparent, and Ed looks really into it. He does this mic lean that looks like he's having fun. He's kind of parading around the stage with the mic stand, and the crowd looks great too. They all look energized, and great performance of Hail Hail, and then following up on Giving a Fly as well. I thought Matt beating the crap out of the toms, like just impeccable work there. They have a good presence up there. You can tell they're in a really good mood. The tour, again, is almost over, so they're just thrilled they're ending this leg in one piece and just playing it out into the sunset, essentially.
Yeah, pretty cool section. This is the time of the tour where Matt, for some reason, he was always jumping one bar ahead before everybody else would give in to Fly. He has a couple of shows that he did that. Maybe he was like getting too excited, hitting the drum kit too hard. But yeah, it's a really good transition section just before we go into the other stuff. And Given to Fly to Super Blood, I think it was a really cool transition too, but Ed had a few words for the audience before that too.
He did. And this actually, I feel like we've seen this flag a couple of times this year. And, obviously back in, I believe it was February or March of 2022 that we lost Taylor Hawkins. And it was a big blow to the music industry, obviously. I mean, one of the biggest bands in the world and one of the most charismatic drummers of all time. I think I have no issue saying that with all the great drummers like Keith Moon and Neil Peart out there. Like Taylor Hawkins belongs in that conversation, especially just watching him live was an absolute treat. So Ed gets a flag. It has like a bird with wings on it, which I believe is one of the Foo Fighters logos, right? If I'm not mistaken.
And it's a tattoo that Taylor had too.
Oh, okay. I knew there was some kind of connection. Yeah. So it says given a fly on it, but the F is the FF logo of the Foo Fighters, which is very, very cool. So Ed says it's thoughtful, and the symbol of the bird represents somebody who's no longer here, but he's in our hearts. And then Ed addresses someone else in the crowd who has a weird face sign of Eddie. And Ed's like, let me get that. This is going to distract me all night. If I have to keep looking at it, we're going to have some problems. So he makes sure he takes that away pretty quickly there. I think that happened either 2023 or 2024. Again, I wonder if it was the same guy.
Yeah, it could be because like he was saying that you don't do that to a singer or something like that because it was kind of fucked up. But he addressed it quickly. But it was kind of funny that he just took it with a lot of humor and it's just like, well, don't do this to me. He's going to mess up with me all night.
Right. That gets you into Super Blood Wolf Moon and Even Flow. Look, Super Blood Wolf Moon is not one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs of all time. It's probably at the bottom of my Gigaton songs. I don't love the song. It's not a half bad live song when the band is on top of it and they're in a good groove with it. I mean, there's been some pretty bad versions of it, I will say that. I don't know what it is. Like, how can they get off track with this song? Like, what can happen to make the song a disaster? Because it has happened. It is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to find one of those that is going to be sitting in the middle. You always listen to like really good ones or ones that are like, oh, yeah, let's not play that for a while. I don't know. It doesn't seem that there is a song that it's very, very complicated for them. I think it's more about the timings and the breaks and all that kind of stuff because it has a lot of stops, it has a lot of changes related with the stops. So maybe that's confusing for the band. But yeah, this one is okay. It's a good version. My favorite one is the one that they played in the Twin Cities on 23. That was a really solid one.
Yeah, I agree. Like, one was fun. Again, it goes into the theme of this set, which is just everybody just have a good time and, get their spirits up. But afterwards, Ed addresses the crowd. There's going to be a lot of talking in the show. It's not a show where we're going to get like 4 or 5 songs in a row. There's no runs that we go on, and that makes it difficult for me to do my job, but we work with it. We'll hang here for you guys. So Ed mentions that the last time they played there 9 years ago, it was 2013. If you remember that show, there's one big thing from the show that Ed had to address, and that was obviously the Sonics moving from Seattle and becoming the Oklahoma City Thunder. And he was pretty pissed at that point. He was pissed at the ownership, and he had some choice words for it. It's a it's a moment. And then they played the song Supersonic, which was kind of fun on top of that. But here he apologizes. He said, "We apologize. Oklahoma stole our thunder, and we have a great women's basketball team. And even though we don't have a team yet, we're very excited that they went to a good home with good people." So it seems like they're no longer upset with that move. And look, it had been, I can't remember the year. It was probably like 2010 or 2011 where the Sonics moved. So, I mean, more than 10 years, you're going to get over it. But, they got a hockey team there now. They got a nice arena that we went to that we'll be talking about next week.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that the NBA sees value in bringing it back to Seattle because I think they deserve it. And I don't really care about the NBA at all, but you
But we got to get a team back to Seattle.
it feels like you need the Sonics more than you do the Sacramento Kings. I'm sorry to Kings fans, but that's just my thought about it.
If you don't like the NBA, if you don't like basketball, the name of the team is part of the pop culture. Like you relate the Seattle Sonics with something. So I really hope that at some point a decision is being made and they can have their spot back, maybe with the same name. Hopefully that'll be cool. But I don't
they're
think
definitely going to be the Sonics. If they have a basketball team there, they're not going to be anything else.
what could be a good name for a Seattle team if it's not the Sonics? That could be like a whole different episode.
The Kurt Cobains.
The Kurt Cobains, the Lanes, Seattle Lanes too. Yeah, Seattle Lanes. I will go for that one.
Seattle Lanes. What is it, a bowling league?
The Seattle Lane. Yeah. Well, Lane Staley. But yeah. Okay. What's the next song?
That would be Even Flow, downtuned here. And there is a moment where Ed kind of goes to the back in this, where he kind of climbs up a ladder. Nothing crazy here, but there's like a little hint of like, oh, could he do something? I think he's just getting up a ladder to see people and get a good view of things. But downtuned, and Mike just going pretty bananas on this, and Ed honestly taking some big mic swings during the end, I think are the talking points from this version.
Again, I know that we can get into the down to stuff. I think the most important thing is the band decided to go with it and they made the best out of this. For me, the most interesting thing is just the fact that you can hear that the guys are really switching in between amps. So sometimes you have certain songs that they sound pretty harsh and a little bit more metallic, and some of the other ones they sound a pretty more mellow ones, it will be a main difference in between like a Fender type amp or a Marshall type amp. But this is cool. Like you can hear like a lot of stuff that they're doing, and it sounds like a more more version of Even Flow, especially what like they were trying to do around that time. So it was kind of like cool to listen to one of those down tune agains, because you don't find many of those. I mean, this tour specifically then is unknown to find.
So our next two songs here, we're going to get into Dance of Clairvoyance, and we're going to get into Daughter. I really enjoyed this version of Dance, and my enjoyment of it kind of stems off of how thumping that bass line wasn't that. And it felt like the vibration coming off the stage was just heavy. Obviously, Stone is not a bassist, but he gets his little moment on bass when you get to this song here, and it's just kind of a cool thing that it's just everybody's sort of in different roles.
Yeah, it's every single time that I see this kind of song, of course, like the other example that we can get is a Smile. It's more about serving the song. And Stone has such a unique style to play the bass that if it's perfectly fine for this, it's like when Jeff goes into the guitar. But for me, the main point out of this track is just like the work that Matt Cameron and Josh and Boom they make in the back, especially Matt. It's freaking outstanding. Like having the ability to recreate a backing vocal drum kit, which is basically like you did the recording in a drum loop and you just play creating different layers, and he makes all of that live with no sort of sequence, with no sort of nothing. Like it's outstanding, like hands down, because it's absolutely amazing.
In between the two songs, again, there's a lot of talking at this show, so we break it up just a little bit here and there, but he mentions a guy with a blue shirt that's in the very, very back row who just dances the night away. And Ed mentions, he's like, you're kind of like me. When I was a kid, my first show in Chicago, I was in the same spot doing the same exact thing. So maybe one day you'll be up here. So that's kind of a fun moment. So Daughter with the brick in the wall tag here gets a nice reaction from the crowd, and Ed turns it into a teacher, leave our bodies alone too. He doesn't make a whole big thing of it. It was just kind of thrown in. So and pretty impressed by the singing at the end of it. But, again, going into the theme here of just everybody having fun at this show.
Yeah. Like the crowd definitely responded well to that one. For me, another thing is just like the story that it comes after this is just, hopefully it's just a tale that was made for a song. We'll never have to worry that this is going to happen. But it was a pretty powerful message that he was just reinforcing the thought of, let's keep what we have and let's take care of what we have before we even going to be wondering about possible things that we maybe have to go out and discover, which is, it's, I think, one of the best Gigaton songs live, and become something more, especially when there's that strong message behind it.
Boy, I mean, Elon Musk was something completely different in 2022 than he is now. That's only 2.5 years, right?
Yeah, but we're not going to mention it by name because the person mentioned in this show is Elon Tusk.
Elon Tusk, right.
Yes.
Right. I mean, this is also kind of a bad time because of what happened with his exploration this past week. Whatever Elon has to say, maybe he should be going back to the drawing board because it ain't working. And maybe you should listen to Ed, maybe more qualified to talk about this stuff. I don't know. Again, this gets you into the hot water with some people, but just kind of pointing some stuff out. But that's as far as I'll go. He says there's something in the news. A wealthy guy rhymes with Elon Tusk. He was interviewed and said, "Are we just going to be a one planet species?" And Ed says, "Well, if all the other planets are just going to be a bunch of fucking dirt with no oxygen, I think we should probably get used to being a one planet species and take care of the one planet that we live on." This one is a cautionary tale called Quick Escape. I fully agree with you. I think that this is the best Gigaton song live, with a 1A and 1B with Retrograde because of how much I love that song live as well. But look, again, I don't want to delve in too much further, but I think we see Quick Escape this year at a more common percentage than we saw it last year for a lot of the reasons just mentioned.
Yeah, I think we're going to get maybe more 7 o'clock, maybe more Quick Escape. It's important because it has a powerful message, like I said before, and that's personally where I stand. I think we should see it more often because it's very important that we hear that message again, because otherwise, Neon, Telon, whatever that name is, who knows what's going to happen afterwards.
Yeah, the certain line, and I'm sure you guys can figure out what line in the song I'm referring to here, but that line after a certain date didn't hit as hard because it didn't have to, but it's going to hit harder than it ever did when they play it on this tour, and they will. I fully expect to see it night one in Hollywood. And honestly, not because of what it implicates, but also because it's a fucking amazing live song. Like, this is one of Mike's best solos of the 2000, like going into 2000. It's one of Mike's best, and honestly one of their best rock and roll, like just pure rock and roll songs that they've had in such a long time. I can't say much more about how great this song is. Like, there's so much to love about this, from just the impassioned lyrics to just the ending that explodes. Like, this song should never be out of rotation. If they're going to play 10 to 15 more years of live songs, we should see Quick Escape enough to where we'll never get sick of it.
A sleeve sack in a bivouac and a Kerouac sense of time. All I wanna think about the old days, green grass, sky and red wine. Should have known so fragile, avoided this one-way flight. When it's game, oh, quick escape.
if you want to make it a statement, open with Quick Escape on night 1 on the new leg.
That would be a statement.
And I'm pretty sure that these guys probably are going to be thinking about it because, again, it's a perfect fit for the times. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to see this one again because this is a good one.
So Ed asked for the lights and a camera here. He wants to address the tallest guy in the front who's wearing a University of Miami shirt. And the crowd boos that and says, oh, well, don't boo. And he's like, well, hey, fuck off. I hate the University of Miami too, but I'm not going to say anything. But I have a new favorite player on the team. And there was a picture of me and these two brothers who were about yay high. And they sent me this picture. And then I got an upgrade. And one is at the Naval Academy and the other is throwing shot put and stuff like that. So they came here with their sister and they show the kid on the screen right on top of the rail. And I mean, he's blocking some people's view because he's a pretty tall dude. So this is like evolution, baby. You went from this tall to this tall, and mentions the name, the Werner family that they're coming from. He says they're growing up nice and fine. And this one is about love and family. It's not easy. There's benefits, but it also gets difficult. This is about when it's good, called Amongst the Waves. Another one that fits in so well within the theme. Just fun, just positivity. It flows so well too. It's kind of a great song for the middle of the set. Like you have Quick Escape that maybe can be considered a little bit kind of have an edge to it. And then you get into something a little bit more carefree and fun with Amongst the Waves. And then you're going to dig back into something more edgy afterwards. I think it balances itself really, really nicely with a version of Amongst the Waves that happens in the spot.
Yeah, and after what happens Amongst the Waves, like, guys, this is so important. The message that he says before the song that is coming after the fact is so important. If you know someone that it might be struggling with stuff, it could happen to anyone. So we got to reach out. We got to be there for the people that you care about, because I was very moved by the message before Habit, because it's something that sometimes we forget. We always think that addiction or substance abuse can happen only to bad people, and it actually could happen to anyone. So I really respect the fact that he made that statement and just rescue the story of someone, or rescue who knows what story, saying like, it could happen to you, it could happen to me. Let's just be there. Let's reach out. Let's find the resources, because I thought that was pretty cool.
This one's a request, and if it comes from somebody who needs to hear a song like this, someone who needs a friend when they're in a situation like this, we're more than happy to play it. Anybody who out there who ever needs help with because of substance abuse, anything like that, you got to make sure to reach out to a friend. No one can judge you, because it happens to anybody, can happen to anybody. It happens to a lot of people, and it happens to good people. Get help, use your friends, and be a friend. This song's called Habit.
So Habit was not played at all this year. I think the last time that they had played it was in 2018, and this was the 99th version of Habit. And they played it 4 times since this version, which is crazy. This is a song I've only seen once, believe it or not. Like, I don't think about wanting to see it because I feel like it's way past its prime now. Like, I don't feel like you need to really see Habit anymore. But if this is the situation where you're going to play it, then it's totally appropriate. So, you know, he does the speaking as a child of Seattle here. And I mean, I love when they're about to break into the ending, everybody kind of goes to the back, like right in front of Matt, and they get into this ready position where they're holding up their instruments. And then once Matt kind of fills in, and everybody just sort of starts running in circles all over the set, and they make it feel like just a crazy moment. And that was pretty cool. Habit is never going to be played at the original speed or the original tuning ever again. But when you throw in something like that, the speech before it, and then, you know, obviously something cool that kind of happens on stage during it, you have something cool going on. So yeah, it turns chaotic and everybody has a good time with it.
Yeah, and after so much chaos at the end, then we have our little breather, which is always very welcome when in the main set they go towards the back, which in this case we have a small town.
And when they do small town for the back, what do we call it? They go behind...
Behind the museum, I don't remember.
They go behind the counter.
I don't think I knew that.
I throw it in there every now and again. I kind of, when the moment's right, and this is when the moment's right for sure. But he says, "Yep, we're gonna take care of an injustice." Blade Sword's back, and then he's pointing out a dude that bought a hot dog during the song.
And there's something going on, and apparently Ed is having a laugh out of that, and there's something extremely special about the hot dog and the guy, so who knows? I mean, yeah. Small town and hot dog. That's what you get.
He gets thrown off, and like midway through the verse, he's just kind of like, the hot dog guy. I can't get my mind off the hot dog guy.
Right. He just like even forget lyrics, and yeah, that was a fun one.
And something I also noticed too, Ed sort of, he's not out in front when they go behind. He just kind of hangs out in the back and just takes a back view, while Matt is the one to be in front with the kit in front there. So I thought that was cool. Kind of a cool dynamic to change it up a little bit. So we're getting down to the final two songs in the main set here. It's going to be Mind Your Manners, and it's going to be closing with Corduroy. I love it. Let's dig in. So he says, Mind Your Manners is about authority and the reflective response they always seem to bring up with me. So he kind of makes a joke a little bit there. But for this show and how unique it is, I really enjoy Mind Your Manners here. I think it's the pick me back up that happens after Small Town that like it kind of jolts you back into the set. And honestly, you get sort of a stigma with big hits off of recent albums. Mind Your Manners is definitely one of those for me. The Fixer and Got Some were definitely those for me as well. That after a while, if you go to a ton of shows around that tour, they're going to play it every night. So you kind of go past that point into the following years. And if that song sticks around, you're like, we really got to hear this one again. And I've done that. I've felt disappointed when I've heard Mind Your Manners in those situations, but that has kind of prevented me from wanting to really dig in further. However, this version felt fresh to me. It felt like it's never used as like the pick-me back up in a set. It's kind of used as the glue. And if it's used as the glue, I don't think it works as well. I think it should be better used as the jolt. So that's what we get here. And I think the song definitely kind of propels you into the end and gives you a good leg up into Corduroy.
Oh yeah, it gives you the last push. But yeah, this is a song that I think that it was overplayed in a few tours ago, and
yeah,
it's unfortunate that sometimes people have that kind of like, oh fuck, they're playing it again. It's a good song, but it feeds up with like how many times we have had Corduroy as a main set closer, because this is great and it's a good version too.
It's definitely happened. I've actually seen it as an Encore 1 closer at Fenway in 2016, and that blew me away because when you get to a certain point in the set, like halfway through, if you don't hear Corduroy, out of sight, out of mind. You're not thinking, oh, hey, Corduroy's going to pop in. So when you get to song number 16 and you're about to end your first set of the night, you think either we're getting Porch, we're getting Rearview Mirror, or the night before they actually at our show in St. Louis, they played Go, which is going to open up the encore. But I think Corduroy nicely blindsides the crowd because it's completely unexpected since it has sort of a predetermined role in Pearl Jam usually. So when you get at the end of the main set, you're excited. There's, again, I'm going to use the word again, there's a jolt to it, and crowd can have something big to leave off of. And it's also the band mixing it up a little bit, which honestly with main set closers, that hasn't quite happened a whole lot. I think last year, the only main set closers were either Porch or Rude in there. I can't remember another one that closed a main set. Maybe there was like one or two that I'm not picking up on at the moment, but I think every night it was either Porch or Rude in there.
And stuff like this is always welcome. I think they have so many songs that they can use as a closer. And this is the kind of song that you can use in multiple spots, opening, middle, transition, they pick me back up. But I love the fact that I haven't seen Corduroy closing a set after a while. And it just, I think it really puts like a really good ending to the main set. And again, it's just so fun to see the show and to see how many different songs you can get from different times. And they're very well balanced and mixed throughout the set for the main one so far. So yeah, it's super interesting to see this, especially closing.
The one thing I will say is that they have the call and response section, and it's an extended call and response section. I just don't think you need that to close a set with. You know, call and responses are for early on. They're to kind of heat you up, to test the waters and see what kind of crowd you have. When you get to the closer, the end of the main set, I just don't think you need the orchestrated call and response. You know what I mean? Like, it felt, just do the regular version. I know a lot of people are listening to be like, oh, well, they should always do the regular quarter rain. I don't disagree with that because I don't love the way that they do it here. I'd rather the call and response version that we got in like 2013, 2016, where it was orchestrated a little bit differently, but I think it was just a little bit too much. It didn't ruin the song for me at all, but number 4, number 5, yeah, you want that, but close the main set, you just want to run right through it. That's it. So, we're at the encore. Let's pause for station identification. We're going to talk a little bit about Patreon and stuff like that, but we'll get right back into the set in just a second. We got some people to thank this week. We have a new patron, and we have an upgraded patron. So our upgraded patron that we get to thank is a good friend of ours who's been with the communities for such a long time, who we essentially saw at like every show last year. Jason was there. It feels like every single night we got to see Jason. So Jason Weiss has joined up on the Horizon Leg tier, which is the $10 tier, which that is such a huge help for us. And, you know, we're going to make some changes to that tier very soon to make it a little bit more enticing for people, because right now it feels like the tiers, they don't have enough of a difference, but there is a difference. But we're working on making that better. It's going to be part of the whole new Patreon package that's going to come in the next month or so. So, you know, hang on to that thought. But we thank Jason for joining up on Horizon Leg and bumping that up from Giga Leg. And we also have another brand new patron that joined up on the Horizon Leg. Believe it or not, I feel like the Horizon Leg, whenever it happens, it comes in droves. You know what I mean? And we're very thankful for that, because it does help a lot more with our cause than maybe a bonus leg tier does. So we got to thank John Resch for joining up on the Horizon Leg tier. And he's already gotten into our chat on Patreon, and he's like, hey, I'm going to every single show. And he seems pretty eager to want to help out with the reaction episodes and stuff as well. So we thank Jason, we thank John. Thank you for your patronage, and we hope that all of you out there are interested in joining up on Patreon as well. And one thing that you will get is, if you are a follower of this podcast, then you like to know what's upcoming. And one of the things that we started to do is that prior to the episode coming out on Wednesday, it'll usually happen on Monday, where we'll put out a before and after episode. So before is, it's before you get to hear the episode, and after is, it's after we record it. So it's a preview for what's coming next. We will get to some talking points that we talked about here and kind of just tee you up for some of the good moments that we're going to talk about in the show. And maybe we can get into some other topics that we didn't dig into on the show as well. But it's just a little bit, it's like 15-minute recording. That's it. And it just gets you a little bit more invested and interested, and hopefully gets you guys to jump in and listen to the bootleg before you start to listen to the episode of the week. So that's a little thing there. Gear Garage, you got the basement, so we're going to start working on some Gear Garages over there, right?
Yep, it's on the works. I just have a few things coming that I need to just to get the ump running properly. But yeah, it's going to get going soon.
And I've been working on some YouTube related stuff, which will be Patreon first exclusives. The thing I'm working on right now is I'm going through every single 90s year and I'm spotlighting the defining show of every single year from 1990 through 1999. And obviously for 1990, there's only going to be one. In 1999, they don't play a lot of shows, but it's going to be pretty comprehensive. I've worked on a script and it might take a long time to work it out, but that is currently what I'm working on. And other things to expect in the next coming months, maybe we'll do some just other conversations here and there and kind of do some lighter content that's not like a research project like episodes sometimes can seem to be. But when the tour comes around, the big thing is the reaction episodes. And also, since the shows are going to be pretty tight, we'll be doing a couple of Patreon exclusives for some of the locations that we'll be at. We've done that the last couple of years and we'll do that again. So a couple of those locations will be Patreon exclusive episodes that you aren't going to want to miss. So if you are interested in joining up, there's easy ways to do it. Just go to patreon.com/live-on-4legs and you can join up that way, or download the Patreon app. That might be easier for you guys to listen on your phone, and you search for Live on 4 Legs and you can join up that way, or you can go to liveon4legs.com and you can click the become a patron button and that gets you in as well. So look, we got the tiers, and like I said, we are restructuring Patreon coming very soon. And I do not expect the $1 bonus tier to be lasting much longer. So now is your time. If you've always wanted to hear what we do on Patreon and support what we do on Patreon, there won't be a lot of time to join up for $1. So do it now. At least get to see all of the old episodes that we've done and check out some of the projects that we've done for Evolution episodes and late night series episodes, and even go back to some of the older reaction episodes from last year and the year before and the year before that. And you'll get a good body of content there. But this is the time to join up for $1 a month, because that's not going to last very long, as before the tour happens, that's going to be the restructure. So only a couple more weeks of that, and I'll continue to convince you guys. But yeah, if you're grandfathered in, and the people that are dollar patrons right now, you don't have to worry about that. You will still be dollar patrons. So if you are interested in supporting us, but don't have the funding for more than $1 a month, then that's what you should be doing. Jump in now. All right, back to The Rock. Getting into the encore here. Ed thanks the crowd, mentions some familiar faces and new faces and young faces that he sees. He starts to introduce the band, calling them some of the greatest musicians on the planet. One thing we can say about everyone on stage, not only are they all fine, accomplished musicians, we started not really knowing exactly what we were doing. But after all these years, it's amazing. If we're going to make a record now, we're making with some of the best musicians in the world. And they just so happen to be in our band. And then he's holding like an olive green t-shirt as he's talking here. And he mentions there's a guy named Nathan who is the brother of Thomas Young. Thomas Young is a person that comes up on this podcast every now and again. He was a former soldier that went to Iraq and had a major life-threatening injury. After leaving Iraq, he spoke up against the war, and Ed and Tom Morello and some other people kind of helped him get his voice across. And it's a great story, and there's a book out there that you should probably read as well. So he tells a little bit about who Thomas Young is And then it just so happens that the camera person who's to Mike's side of the stage, Nathan is right under him. So he moves the camera over and you can see him and everybody kind of just pointing to him. So it's a cool moment. And he dedicates the next one to his brother. So Go, Alone, Evolution are going to kick you off your encore here. Now, Go is interesting because, as mentioned, it closed the main set in St. Louis, but it was also played in Nashville somewhere in the encore, maybe like the same spot. So they must have, around this point, thought, hey, you know what? We can get back on a little bit of a roll with Go. But since this night, they've only played it 2 more times. Once in St. Paul, and then another time in LA last year. And that was the only time they played it last year, was in LA. And I don't blame them for not playing it, because if you listen to this, it doesn't quite feel like the lightning rod that you once had. It's down-tuned, it's slower paced, and it's just kind of one of those things where if it doesn't sound like it should sound, maybe it is time to move on from it.
Yeah, this is a song that I think suffers from that. I like the song, but I struggle so much when I listen to this kind of version where it's a little slower and it doesn't work for me. But maybe it's going to come back in its full form now that Ed has his voice a little bit more recovered, and hopefully he stays healthy, but this just doesn't work for me. It doesn't speak to me, you know?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because the song, like When You Got That Cooking Live, it's one of their best. It's just one that can just bring the crowd to a frenzy. But they're in their 60s. If you brought Go up to any other band that was in their 60s, they'd probably say the same thing. Like, yeah, you aren't going to get it quite the same. So, look, I don't think that we've seen the end of it, but I think we've seen the end of trying to make it as a normal part of the set. And that's the unfortunate truth here. But you know what? If you miss it, there are tons of bootlegs that you can go back to in the last 30 years where Go is a part of it, and choose a year and it'll sound pretty damn good. So, you know, you just gotta cherish those moments and just move on to the next, essentially. So we get a rare one in Alone afterwards, and it's introduced as being a song that they played the first time that they were in Oklahoma City, so they're dusting it off here. Good version. Thought the band was really on top of it, and I really like when Ed kind of does his little I can't help myself. He kind of does that like in between verses. I guess it's kind of in the breakdown section. I love when he does that, but I love even more the ending where he does the wide awake and escapes in a panic. I think when the music cuts out and it's just him doing that, like there's just something sort of spine tingling about that. And even when the song's not in its prime anymore, it still works really well.
Oh yeah, probably one of the most tasty licks of Pearl Jam history. It's just what Stone does on his side is absolutely exquisite. But I really like when they take it to the end and you see that echo coming out of Ed's voice, and you add that extra spice that the song needed at the end. And just one of the ones that I know some of the fans out there, like it's the one they have been chasing for a while. But yeah, this one is good.
Never woke up on every floor. Had as long as he can remember. Tries to forget, but he can't. Out of bed and he dreams in the shower. She's standing naked and apologizing. He reaches for her and the water turns a red. God, woken up to be burned again.
Evolution sounds great. I think that you got the crowd going again, and I'll beat the dead horse. This is a fun show. Got fun versions at a fun show. You get to the next section here with Porch and Alive and Indifference, and again, all of that is coming out of them. It's just the party atmosphere for this encore is just extending the party atmosphere that happened in the main set. There's no like business in the main set, party in the encore like there usually is. The whole entire show feels like a celebration of something. So you get to Evolution and Porch and Alive, and they're really on a good roll. Porch, I mean, it's kind of like almost in a way the unpredictability factor with Porch in the encore, because you're so used to it just being a main set closer. So when you get Porch after Evolution, it does feel like you're getting something fresh, because they don't do Porch into Alive very often at all. So that was a whole lot of fun. This version of Porch is a lot of fun. There's a lot of running around the stage and Ed reflecting the light off his pick guard, and just, yeah, I mean, party atmosphere all around. You can't really say much more than that.
Oh yeah, and they're going to keep it going, and the versions are super good. Evolution, Porch, Alive. I've loved the fact that they like threw out Indifference too after this 3, just kind of like to give you a little breather, because those 3 were a lot before. Like they just like, all right, it's time to go home. But party atmosphere at all the time. Were the lights on, Randy, in those 3, or they're still like with all the lighting and all that stuff? Because it feels like they were so energetic that maybe the lights were on.
Definitely during Alive and Indifference, for sure.
Cool. Yeah, you can really tell that, because they were such in good mood, and they have all the right in the world to celebrate. Like they made it through when they had a lot of challenges, and they were healthy at the end, and they were still performing, and they were delivering, which is the most important thing.
I'll say in Alive, there are a couple points to bring up, and I actually have a story here. So there are a couple flags being thrown onto the stage that he puts over the speakers. One of them has the Crazy Mary lyrics on them, and I think the other one might be the state flag for Oklahoma, kind of cyan color, light bluish. So I think he has that on stage, and he also still has the Given to Fly Taylor Hawkins flag on. So just some cool moments that he's connecting with the crowd. But also, he has a wine bottle, and he gives his wine bottle to a member of the crowd. And the person he gives his wine bottle to is actually my friend Sasha. And I have kind of a crazy story with her for this tour, like a couple shows before this. So I don't remember all of the details that happened in terms of like how it all worked out, but unfortunately she had like hurt her foot. And it's amazing that she was still like on the rail after hurting her foot. I believe this was in Camden that she hurt her foot. And she calls me up after the Camden show, and she says, "Hey, are you on the 1:15 flight to Nashville?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she's like, "Can I ride with you? Because I don't think I can manage to move my luggage myself." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sure." So we're going through the airport, like she's getting I can't remember if she was on a scooter or in a wheelchair, but like I'm just like double fisting the suitcases, just like pushing my suitcase, pushing her suitcase, and she's dealing with her hurt foot and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story. Just kind of went and helped somebody, and she went and did all of those shows, and then I saw her again in St. Louis, and I think she was doing a little bit better. But from I think going to Nashville the day in between, I believe that was a Thursday, so this was a Tuesday show, and she was already feeling better and good enough to be in the front. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So I am going to take credit for her healing. I hope you're okay with that.
Maybe you had some sort of mystical powers that they help her out. So yeah, it's all good.
Well, I won't tell anybody my secret, but
moving luggage.
All I got to do is just kind of twiddle my fingers a little bit, and the magic starts to. Yeah. Oh my God, you've healed me.
I know. Healing powers by Alive on 4 legs. That could be a new brand.
But I can't fucking heal myself.
True.
That's my kryptonite.
Yep. Everybody has one of those. Everybody has a kryptonite somewhere.
All right. Well, you want to talk about vibrators for a second?
Do we have to?
I mean, it's part of the show, right?
Okay. I guess we are in that point in a relationship, Randy. So sure. Let's talk
I
about
mean,
vibrators.
look, sometimes you got to experiment a little bit. So,
True, true. Especially when you have a truck that it basically unloaded in the highway full of stuff. Why not?
yeah. So, all right. Ed has to stop Stone from playing Rockin'. Stone is getting into Rockin' in the Free World. And I think Rockin', it was either Rockin' or Indifference had like the premises around it that they weren't sure if they were going to play it or not. But, anytime that Indifference is before a cover, then you got something a little extra. So he says, before we ended the night, and I've been thinking about this all week, you guys made the news in the most fabulous way. There was a tractor trailer that turned over and spilled out sex toys all across the highway. This is true. And then I started to think about it. Why is there a whole truck of vibrators? And why are they all strung over the highway? Why are there so many? So I started to think about it. And I support the theory that you've taken away a woman's right to choose. So they don't want to take any chances. So they're taking these things into their own hands. And who can blame them? We know that women are the best people to make decisions about their own lives. That's a good way to have to spin that. And yeah, you can have a little fun with a little bit of vibration, ladies. You guys know that.
Um, well, it's a pretty good analogy. It's a fun one, but I just can't remember reading the news about it or whatever it was. But I'm pretty sure that it was quite interesting. I wonder how many types there were. You know?
I feel like I saw a meme recently that was like the type, and this is like really, this is the X-rated part of the show, I suppose, but it was trying to explain, like, I guess, women's masturbation in terms of like, digital analog. And I think a vibrator was like, heavy overdrive, and then like hand was considered analog. I have to find it now.
It makes
Yeah.
sense, though. It makes sense. Um,
Yeah. As some I can't remember what the other ones were, like what was considered digital, and there was another one there too. I'm just gonna search real quick for vibrator meme so I can like get it right. Vibrator meme analog.
that's gonna be your search history. You might get in trouble for that.
My wife might be a little intrigued by it actually. I'm like not even getting good results on this.
Unknown.
Damn it. This is like this week I saw it too. I very clearly cannot find this. So I am not going to exhaust the scrolling when searching vibrator meme on Twitter.
Maybe for the next
But
episode, we'll have more detailed information about what's that.
if I come across it again, you guys will be the first to know. Yeah, my bad. I think my For You ads are going to be a little bit different for the next coming week or so. But I wish I would give you the right information for what that meme was because it was pretty fucking funny. But Rockin' in the Free World ends your night. And I think we'll close it at that. Oh, that was quite a way to finish out.
Yeah. Trucks and vibrators, man. I mean, what else can we say?
I mean, have you ever used a vibrator in a truck before?
No, and I have no plans to do it. So, yeah, no.
I can tell you were really comfortable with having this conversation here.
No. Okay, so let's talk about ratings.
Right on. All right, let's pick some songs. Since I
Sure.
haven't thought about it, you go first, and I'll be fiddling around somewhere.
Uh okay, my number 3 is not going to be a vibrator conversation or anything like that. My number 3 is going to be a habit. My number 2 is going to be quick escape, and my number 1 is going to be hard to imagine.
Ooh, we're very close. So I am going to take a song that I felt some vibration from. I'm going to say Dance with Clairvoyance is number 3 because that bass was absolutely vibrating. I'm going to also go exactly how you did. I'm going to say Quick Escape, and then number 1, I'm going to say Hard to Imagine. Those are the moments from this.
What do you think about this show? You want me to go first?
Yes, please.
All right. I did have a tough time because, again, I was one of those fans where, like, my brain just cannot conceive the fact that certain songs are going to be down tuned. But I think now looking back, I just have so much appreciation and respect because they were just trying to run the marathon as long as they could just to keep the set long. And some of the performances were pretty good. And how much fun they were having and how mixed the set is. I'm happy to give this show an 8.5. I think it's a pretty good show. It could be considered maybe one of those sleepers that you need to listen to.
Sleeper show, absolutely. And I think I'm right there at the same exact rating. I think I'm at an 8.5 as well. And all I'll say here is that sometimes you don't need shows that have like a monumental, like existential meaning to them. Sometimes they can just be flat out fun. And that's really all that I had listening to this. And I'm surprised that I pulled out more conversation than I did because just listening to them, like, I'm having fun. I'm having a good time. Everybody's happy. And if they're happy, I'm happy. And there were no like, oh, well, the meaning of this and the placement of this. I wasn't thinking about any of that because it didn't matter. Like, it was just having a fun time listening to a bootleg. And I don't know, like, again, I said in the beginning, like, could this be a top 10 show of 2022? I don't know. Like, I think it comes close. I think it could come close. But I also don't think that this show needs to be rated on a list like that in order to be celebrated. So it's just one of those shows that if you were there, I think I can fully understand putting this pretty high on your list of favorites for sure. But, for anybody else that's listening from afar, I feel like there's a lot to enjoy here. And that's exactly what we did. So next week, we are finally going to do Seattle Night 1 from last year. And we've been waiting on it for a couple weeks. I know that we mention it like every other week or so, but we had waited on it because we really want to get our friend group together who all stayed in the same B&B in Seattle and all experienced all the same stories and all that. And we plan to get everybody together, talk about the show, and then use that as part of the episode. So that's what we're doing. Again, another recent thing. And then we can go back to talking about the past in the week after that, I suppose, which we don't have a plan for yet, but we'll talk about that another day. Seattle, Night 1, next week, where Javier and I were having some moments together in that crowd. That was a big one, for sure.
Yeah, we were vibing.
Okay, I'll let it go. Well, we hope you enjoyed this one. A lot of fun things that we just talked about and some funner stuff at the end for sure. But if you are listening to this podcast and you realize that I am not subscribed to this podcast, please go ahead and do so. Go to YouTube, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, and make sure that you are subscribed so you know when our episodes are going to come out. They do come out every Wednesday, but still, you want to get that notification. You want to get that pop-up. You want to know when the stuff is happening. And we appreciate those who are interested in continuing to subscribe. And we did get a lot of new subscribers on YouTube this week, and we thank all those people. Those people are very excited for the Live on Four Legs God's Dice movie to come out. Again, that comes out on Friday, so please make sure you do check it out. And yeah, if you go over to any of those platforms, you can leave a comment, you can like, rate, subscribe, rate us 5 stars on Spotify, rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcast if you think we deserve it. This episode definitely was a lot of fun, and we plan on doing some more fun episodes as the time goes down and we get closer to the tour. So help and support. Comment, let people know what you think about what we do, and it will help them determine whether or not they want to listen to our wonderful voices or not. So we can put this show to bed now. Let's say goodbye. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always, to Seattle next week, the pilgrimage, finally getting to Seattle shows, and we'll have our friends on to talk about it all. Until then, see you on the pod.
To the sacred land we go.
Haunting, familiar, yeah. I can't seem to place it. Can I find a candle of thought to light your name? Yeah, lifetimes are catching on with me. This guy just bought a hot dog or something. It's cracking me up. I swear doesn't play. I'm the hot dog threw me off. Take